7 o'clock. We'll call the meeting to order. Welcome the board as well as those who are in attendance tonight. Let's pray here at the beginning. John could lead us to the word for our invocation.
You bet. Thank you, Jim. Can we bow our heads, please? Our dear Heavenly Father, we thank you for this opportunity tonight that we're able to go about the business of Georgetown Township. We pray for your wisdom. Please, Lord, help us as we deal with the budget and other activities that we are very wise in our decisions. We thank you for all the wonderful people that work here for us at Georgetown Township and how well they have served over the years. And our first responders have been just incredibly busy the last few weeks, and we are thankful that things have turned out so well. In many, many cases, it could have gone the other way. We thank you, Lord, for our country. We look at the world events, and we pray for peace in Ukraine. And we reflect on the Queen and her passing, 70 years. What an incredible amount of service that she's given and been an inspiration to the world. Thank you again. We ask for your blessing. In your Son's name we pray. Amen.
Amen. Thanks, John. We all stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible,
with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. And it looks like we're all present here this evening. Is there a motion to approve tonight's agenda?
So moved.
Support. Moved and supported. I want to, if I could here, add item 5A, and that being Roger and Brad, to be able to give just an update from their perspective in Lansing on the front end of the meeting. Any issues with that? I guess I can move to amend the agenda then in that respect. Support? Support. All in favor say aye.
Aye. Aye.
All right. Now with that amendment, we'll vote on the agenda as amended. Motion in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Aye. All right. I'm doing it technical, but all right. And all in support, say aye.
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 All right. With that change, then we now have our agenda. And item 5A, I'll look to Roger as well as to Brad. Brad, you don't have to. I did give Roger the heads up and asked him to come, but you're welcome as well.
Well, Brad usually follows Roger very well. So I'm sure I'll leave a little bit on the table so that way the good representative can speak to it too. So thank you for inviting me. I think we got an email from Jim. So, hey, Raj, stop on by, and I think it's always good to keep in touch with our townships, too. So, and give you a little update what's happening in Lansing. So, this past year, one of the focus I've been working on is kind of flipping the script of how we have a dialogue in Lansing. And it seems like we continue to work out the same playbook for the last 30 years, and that is we continue to invest in the same things time after time. And what brought it to the forefront was something happened here in Ottawa County and something happened out into the Lansing and Detroit area. Just before Ford announced about their moving to Tennessee, and then suddenly the state of Michigan in a 2-week period of time was able to come up with a funding program for some EV battery plants in the state of Michigan because they were concerned about that leaving. But we didn't hear about in the media, but the governor of Texas put some press releases about it. Right here in Ottawa County, we lost almost nearly $1 billion expansion to the Leprino cheese plant. Think of that. Equivalent to these announcements for these EV battery plants. And it was over an infrastructure issue. Now, I can't say for sure. A rumor had it was probably about a $3 or $4 million water line or some issues on that. And I said, you know what? We got to change that dialogue. So my philosophy has been of the last year is advocating and speaking on how do we invest in our hometown communities. Flip that script of how we always do some of these expenditures. And some of this about investing in your hometown communities. It's not about investing in an individual company or some corporation, but it's investing in infrastructure. And once that's invested in, then you allow for not one specific industry, but for others. So with that there, we started that dialogue and introduced the bill, kind of encapsulated it, and found myself busy speaking throughout the state and even throughout some other states and writing some papers on it to highlight, kind of, again, making sure we invest in our hometown communities. And we've been having some success on that there in the last budget cycle. We did take care of some infrastructure issues throughout the state and even specifically in here Ottawa County for a major food processor that was over had overcapacity of the current system. But right here in Ottawa County, we have a lot of food processing and other entities that put a lot of demand on our system. And so tomorrow, I was hoping to see the MEDC pass the funding for the Coopersville waste treatment line. So basically, the city of Coopersville is over capacity of water treatment, and we continue to throw $1 million, $2 million, $4 million ad hoc money, and it seems like it's over capacity. However, it did get pulled, and a little frustration is because there's that issue in Big Rapids and competing for things. So I was afraid that the Big Rapids money may supersede the Coopersville, but everything has been put a hold on at this point in time. So then I'm doing a lot of work behind the scenes on those things, but my philosophy is we shouldn't be catering to one individual corporation. But I do believe we can do more placemaking or making sure the infrastructure and is into place. So that way the individual homeowner, the individual company, and you can grow the community. Use the example of Coopersville. They have industrial park they can't expand in because they don't have a water treatment. You have a couple of companies there that want to expand and are possibly even looking to move to Texas. It already has a footprint there. So this is something that I think we need to change the narrative and look at it from a different perspective. And if we do have these dollars, ARPA dollars, making sure that when we invest those, it's not for one individual company, and also it's going to have a dividend that will pay back for a 30-year plus period of time, because those are one-time dollars, taxpayers' dollars that are coming out of your pocket. And I always say, first we should start looking at what ways we can always reduce tax and the tax burden. And with that there, along with investing in our hometown communities, I do believe we have an opportunity that we should address the sales tax on gasoline. And that is a tax that's when you put your gasoline in your car at the local pump, that's not going to the roads. And I know there's some things with revenue sharing on the component, but I do believe we have an opportunity to address that. Because we're going to have to face the funding mechanism, how to fund our roads. EV vehicles are coming across, and that is a declining revenue stream when you look at the internal combustion motor or the ICE motors, and yet that's how our core funding is. So I believe if we get a chance to remove that sales tax, that will clear the way for some other heavy lifting conversations. So with that, those are the key items I've been working on, flipping the script of how we invest our hometown communities, also looking at how we can take these dollars and also give some tax relief to the hardworking men and women in the state of Michigan. And in the meantime, still addressing issues such as hair culturalists, because I didn't ever believe how much media attention would come to a very simple issue. But I'm very frustrated in regards to you might employ 1 or 2 employees, or you might employ 1,000 employees. All should have an equal voice when you come to Lansing. And when I seen a constituent that in Ottawa County, and this regulation was prohibiting from her business and moving forward and her clients, a nonsense type of regulations has no sense in science or that component, and yet the department would not remove that, and we have to go to the legislative process. That's why if you see some of the media reports, I had a stern look on my face because I heard Shakitra's testimony. There again, you shouldn't have to go through that process regardless if you only employ 1 person or 1,000 people. So even dealing with issues like that, along with multi-million-dollar water treatment systems, and also just changing the narrative how we do business in the state of Michigan. And ultimately, I look at it, if we can attract the food processing, agricultural, and those areas to the state of Michigan, once they set their foot here in the state of Michigan, they're not going to leave that quickly, unlike the other industries continue to seem like to hold us hostage in their, we'll go to Tennessee, we'll go to Kentucky, we'll go here. But when we have that to invest in here, and you know what the real dividend is, that it lowers food costs. Because when we do the processing here, we learn from COVID, it's about logistics. When you lower that logistic cost, ultimately you reduce that high cost of food at the checkout counter too. So even if we can track those processes here in the state of Michigan, even the people in Grosse Pointe, Michigan will benefit from it when they go to their grocery store. So with that, always open for some questions too, and you may have.
I have a question.
Yes.
So I've been following this ARPA money, and in our county, we've got $57 million. And so far, what I've been seeing this money expended on is the dwelling place, social issues. I'm not seeing it in infrastructure. And you know, even our own township, we have a new water line that's got to be put in the next 4 years of $15 million down 48th Avenue to increase our water pressure for our citizens.
But you got a growing population.
What's that?
You have a growing population.
Right. Right. And to be honest with you, when I look at the committee that's put together in Ottawa County for the ARPA funds, Georgetown has no representation, yet we represent 1/6 of the population in Ottawa County. We've been shut out as far as I'm concerned. I see a lot of inclusion and diversity people on there. I see other individuals from other organizations, including a couple of them from Muskegon Community College, which that's a different county. I don't know if anybody told them that yet, but that's a different county. So I'm trying to figure out who allocated the ARPA funds to Ottawa County. Does that come from the state?
There's a federal formula. So there's distributed to state level and county level and some areas. And then, so on that area, I agree with you, Gary, because the conversation has to be, those are one-time dollars. Those are the taxpayers' dollars. And if they're going to be, if they're left on the table, they will be used by some other community.
Right.
You can just say Hollywood, California, or some of the nature of that. However, when you have those one-time dollars, you cannot shore up or stand up programs that are not sustainable with ongoing, because you're going to have an ongoing funding stream that's not going to be available. So like any reasonable business or any well-run municipality, you have that opportunity. You invest that into core infrastructure. And when you do that in core infrastructure, such as increased water lines or sewer capacity, that will pay you a dividend in years, because now you can do additional development, you can track additional industry and all those areas. And when you do that, you increase your tax base and increase that funding flow. Other programs continue, you stand those up, and yet that has a continual requirement for additional dollars. And believe me, as you can see, you know firsthand, anyone in the building industry, increased interest rates, our robust economy is shrinking as we speak. If you look at your 401k program plans, you can see how that's shrinking, and you just go forward basically with inflation. They have to control it by shrinking the economy. Shrink the economy, that's economic growth. So we're going to be heading to some lean times. So these dollars might be a little flush on the balance sheet right now, but you better be careful. I don't care if you're the federal government, the state of Michigan, or local municipalities. These dollars need to be utilized in a sound, disciplined fashion, and making sure that in the long run that they will tie you over during those lean times, which I feel are coming up fairly soon.
But is there oversight now? So if Ottawa County spent $57 million, who oversees whether they spent it on proper stuff?
Ottawa County has autonomy over those dollars, and thus, as a resident of Ottawa County, encourage those in the decision making to use sensible decision. And you have a position as trustee as one of the largest townships. Was it the 9th largest township in the state of Michigan? The 8th population? That carries some weight. Don't let your voices be heard.
Well, I actually have a letter. I have an email into the Board of Commissioners that they'll probably hopefully look at tomorrow.
Yep.
They meet tomorrow. But it is my frustration because this actually kind of just came to me in the last week or two. It's been brought to my attention. And I'm like, so I've been doing a lot of reading on the website and what's going on, and I'm looking at representation. We don't have any. And I'm looking at the fund that's been allocated already. It's gone like to different organizations, but it's not going back to infrastructure. It's not going back to, like you said, things that are going to pay dividends down the road. It's going to things that, if you give $500,000 a dwelling place, 2 years from now, you need another $500,000. It's not something that's going to continue to come back. So that's why I'm curious, who's overseeing this? Is there accountability to what they're spending their money on?
So they set a committee up, and on the autonomy, I can't speak to that because the county has its own autonomy in that component. But I would challenge each of you, don't underestimate your position. Again, you represent one of the 8th largest townships in the state of Michigan, 50-some thousand people. Let that be heard.
Yeah.
You hold position of influence.
Thank you. And they're accountable to the county commission ultimately, Gary. And I put the request in for 48th through Kyle, our commissioner, and he came back to say that the brick and mortar and infrastructure they'll invest in will only be county related. So if it were going to be brick and mortar infrastructure, it would be a county project.
A county project per se.
Not a city or a township. But that's not to say more voices can't move that needle. But anyway.
You can reframe that infrastructure need as a county-wide infrastructure need at times too.
Certainly, everyone.
Because depending what perspective that's what I do in Lansing at times. You got to reframe it because sometimes you may, from a certain perspective, you're looking at it maybe a township issue. But from if you get that infrastructure done properly, it may have a benefit. It should have a benefit not just for Georgetown, but for the overall of the county. And that's where even this infrastructure I'm talking about in Coopersville does affect Georgetown Township because it will have economic growth. It has employment opportunities. It's a regional aspect, and ultimately, if we have attract more ag processors, that will lower food costs right here in the state of Michigan.
Well, then it also frees up dollars from our own budget. So if we got $15 million to do that, we'd have $15 million that maybe we know that we have to upgrade some other infrastructure on the northwest quadrant.
Correct.
Now we got that $15 million. Okay, so then that becomes, it doubles up then. Now we got $30 million we can spend over 5 or 6 years and try to build infrastructure so we can do a better job of growth. I mean, that's the reality of it.
And that's why I go right back to how we have to flip the script of our discussion, making sure that we invest in this infrastructure. The most important infrastructure is the infrastructure you don't see. But if you don't see it, it's out of mind, out of vision, and doesn't get the attention. But we've learned at a state level, the city of Flint, look at what happened right there and the cost of that.
Yeah, we know all about that. That's why we got the lead to copper thing. You could save us another $1 million to get rid of that too. So
that's another whole discussion, especially too, is when we have reaction to an issue like in Flint, and yet that trickles down to our local communities because they have done it right, and yet there's I call overreach at times.
Oh yeah.
And overreaction to it, and then pose a huge burden upon some local communities, and you have to spend $1 million, $2 million looking for something that doesn't even exist.
Right.
And yet that's a part of the rules, and that's where we in Lansing have to continue to push back and challenge, and also make sure you work with your organizations like Michigan Township Associations, and with them, Unified Voice helps us in Lansing and put some balance to these discussion, and making sure, again, these dollars are used in a fruitful way with a dividend paying, not just to squander away at this point in time. Any other questions?
Thank you. Appreciate it, Roger.
It's always a pleasure being here, and anytime you need to contact myself or Brad in the future, or Luke Meerman. I talked to Luke today too, so he's doing good work out there also. So just keep us all. I always say we have a good team representing us in Ottawa County, and regardless of the barriers, we answer the calls on all the issues there. So with that have a great evening. And good work, and thank you for the work you do at the trustee level, because it's not easy. I always say the closer you get to the people, the more intense it can be. So with that again, thank you for all the work you've done, as it makes my job easier in Lansing. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Brad, you don't have to, but you're welcome to. So
I can make mine way shorter. So you can feel like you can move on. Just a couple of really interesting things that happened this last week. I don't know how many of you are deer hunters or do that, but you've probably been aware that there's a reporting requirement, 72 hours, you have to report what you shoot and all kinds of stuff. No matter where you are, no matter whether you got cell signal or not, there is no grace, or was no grace. The House moved a bill on Wednesday that's going to eliminate the entirety of the reporting requirements. We just think it's a draconian kind of thing, and it needed to be eliminated in total. And so that's what it does. It just says that you can report, don't have to. There's no penalty, that kind of thing. And so we sent it on to the Senate. We'll see what the Senate does with it in short order. And then we'll find out what the governor does with it as well. That's always an interesting thing. Along with that, on last week, Wednesday, I don't know if you heard, but we took up 23 bills that were part of a 30-bill package. And those 23 bills all related to emergency procedures if we have a pandemic or something else. And in this last go-round, the governor said, 28 days doesn't mean anything. I can keep going as far as I want to. And all that stuff was pulled back. But all of these bills relate to each different department that you can still move forward after 28 days. The citizens can say, no, this is through the legislature can say this is either a problem or it isn't a problem, and we can move forward with stuff. And so these bills all relate to being able to move forward within a pandemic, not being able to be shut down for an interminable length of time. So happy to talk to you about any of those things. That's the kind of stuff that we're trying to get done because we think it makes sense.
Okay, thank you. Any questions?
Brad, I appreciate the deer hunting. I couldn't believe it when I read it, and I thought, how would they ever enforce it? But how bold.
Yeah.
So thank you. Appreciate you taking a stand.
It's about the money, because it's the fine that was going to get you. Just like the seatbelt law.
Thank you.
All right, thank you. Item 6, communication letters and reports received for information. Item 7, public hearing and consideration of the 2023 budget. Is there a motion to open the public hearing?
So moved.
Support.
Supported. All in favor say aye.
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 Anyone opposed? All right. So our public hearing is open tonight on the draft budget for 2023. If there's anyone here from the community that wishes to speak to that budget, you're welcome to do so at this time. And seeing none, is there a motion to close the public hearing?
So moved.
Support.
Okay, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed? All right. Not sure we've ever had no one say anything, but we certainly had a few. At this point then, it's for the board to move forward then on the 2023 budget. Is there a motion to adopt its resolution?
So moved.
Support.
Moved and supported. This is, I think, probably the third time in front of us. But there's yet this opportunity for further discussion among the board if anyone wishes to address the budget.
I would move to amend the motion on the floor to reduce the tax rate from 2.25 to 2 mils.
I support.
Okay, moved and supported. Comments? I know we discussed this last time and voted on it. Is there any further comments on this before we we can do a roll call vote on that?
Well, I guess what I would say is the reason for it is this time we actually have firmed up the idea of giving pay increases, not just normal, but an inflationary pay increase with cash bonuses to employees, which I think there's value to that. But I think in return too, I think we have an opportunity because of surplus or our net position change every year, to do something for our taxpayers.
Anyone else?
My reason for support would be the same as the last meeting. Essentially, looking at the budget and if there's room in the budget, and I take a view from the taxpayer standpoint of being able to, when we can, provide a break for them, little as it might be. It's the principle of the matter that we have it in the budget, and to provide that break to our taxpayers because they're going through the same inflationary economy and headwinds as our township employees and everyone else. So my stance is the same as last week.
Anyone else?
Jim, I think per household it comes out to about $35 if we were to drop it. I think it's important. Rob recommended that we keep it the same. Dan worked with him on this. I think we should give the same tools to Rob that we gave to Dan. I'm not saying in the future. It might not be something we take a look at. There is revenue, but also we're facing incredibly challenging times. We don't know what's going to be happening. I believe we're in a recession right now, and our rate is the lowest. And I think people get an incredible bang for their buck. But in the future, we could take a look at it again, but I don't think we should right now.
Very good. Gary, any different opinion from you from the last time?
Nope.
All right. Then are you guys ready to take a roll call vote?
Yep.
All right.
Mr. Swam.
Yes.
I understand the motion, then. This is
Yeah,
to
Michael's
change.
motion to reduce.
Michael's, I'm sorry, no.
Yeah, this is on the amendment to the,
I'm sorry, I thought we were voting on the budget.
You're no.
That's correct.
Mrs. Steele?
No.
Clerk is a yes. Supervisor?
no.
Treasurer?
Yes.
Mr. Bellick?
No.
Mrs. Monti?
Yes.
4-3, turned down.
Okay. Any other discussion about the 2023 budget before we vote? Okay, hearing none.
I guess I do have one. I still wrestle with that whole, the lift station upgrade, the $1.4 million. I know, Rob said it will be, in depreciation deletion. I'd just like to see maybe an asterisk just calling it out saying, we're spending $1.4 million on these lift station upgrades. Here's where it's at. Because as it sits right now, it's going to be done, but there's no, I guess, no accounting line item in the budget that reflects that. So that budget will drop by $1.4 million. I know that that's where that money went from their budget, department budget. But, and I'm sure it'll come up in the audit. But I'd just like that clarification on that. Or at least it's on the record now, so on video, assuming the video works.
Sure. All right.
It'll be in a minute.
Okay. Other comments? Hearing none, clerk, could you call roll?
Yep. Mrs. Monti?
No.
Mr. Bellick?
Yes.
Treasurer?
No.
Supervisor?
Yes.
Clerk is a yes. Mrs. Steele?
Yes.
Mrs. Swam?
Yes.
Okay. Thank you. 5-2. Right. And it's passed. Appreciated the work of Rob and staff as well as board members in previous meetings and some of the work that's gone on behind the scenes as well. Item number 9, the consent agenda. Is there a motion to approve tonight's consent agenda?
So move.
Support.
Do we need to do public
Public
comment?
comments?
Oh, did I skip over? Okay.
Okay.
There's another one. Yep. Another opportunity for public comment this evening. This would be on remaining items on the agenda tonight. The previous one had to do just with the budget. This would be anything else that we have yet to address on our agenda this evening. And seeing no one, then we'll close that public comment period. There will be one more toward the end of the meeting when anyone in the public may address this board on any issue of interest to you. Thank you. Number 9, consent agenda. Is there a motion to approve?
So move.
Support.
Moved and supported. Any comments? Questions? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed? And it is carried. Item 10, a potential DPW vehicle purchase. Is there a board member that wishes to place before the board tonight a motion to approve a purchase of a vehicle for our DPW department?
So move.
According to the bids received. Been moved by Gary. Supported by John. They all received, albeit by email just recently here, the bid amounts. There were 2 of them. And I guess they're offering discounts again. They hadn't this past year, but the discounts aren't as large as they have been in the past for municipalities. I am told that the lesser bid amount from Denoyer, that particular truck wouldn't have several of the items they wished, but that the preference still within the department would be that would be suitable, which is good because it is the lower of the 2 bids. So comments on the motion that's before you.
And the motion is for the lower bid, the $42,238.
Is that right, Gary? You made the motion. Is it to approve the lower bid with Denoyer?
Yeah, that's fine.
Okay. All right. Hearing none.
Like discussion.
Yep.
I guess if, I don't know if it's worth amending, but if that, $42,000, I mean, it seems like a pretty good price. But if there is, do we want to leave that motion open or we amend it? So if there was a 2022 on the lot They could purchase it if it had the options they wanted, but that one didn't. Wouldn't have to come in front of the board. They'd be approved to spend up to $42,238.
Are you amending the motion?
Yeah, I would make that amendment.
The amendment would be they can get a 2023 for that dollar amount, or they can get a 2022 for that dollar amount if it has the specs that they want.
Yeah, if available. So I mean, if there was, just to give them that option. They don't have to, but do we well, I guess I made the motion for the amendment. Has it been seconded?
I can second it.
All right, so discussion. Guess it would be up to them if they wanted to do that. They wouldn't have to.
But it has to stick with Denoyer Chapelot, so that would be part of the.
It'd be the dollar amount.
Yeah, the dollar.
The dollar amount.
But they
so
have
they
to
could,
stick with Denoyer.
no, they could do it.
Oh, got it.
If Batten had one on the lot, they could hit Batten or whoever. Do we have an employee now? Have we hired an extra?
Yes.
Okay, so we do have the employee, so we need it. What was the turn time on getting this?
Do you know any?
Okay. So, and that's, I guess that's part of the amendment to that motion too, is that it gives them that flexibility if they need a truck now, they're going to spend it.
I don't personally mind giving them that flexibility. I mean,
Yeah, I'd support that
go to Denoyer for the 23, or they find something they like better.
I'd support that
That
amendment.
range, sure. Okay, cool.
I'm okay with the flexibility, but I bought a truck this week and it's crazy.
It's crazy.
I don't think they'll, but if you want to try, I'm okay with that, but I'm not very confident that'll happen.
Yeah, our new guy, Nick Bruin's been on for several weeks, and he's driving the Escort, the assessing vehicle. So we'll see how long it takes.
Okay, so it's been moved and seconded. All in favor, say aye.
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 Anyone opposed? All right.
That would be for the amendment, right?
That's for the amendment.
Right, that's
Now
for
we
the
have to go off
Yep.
of.
So that was the amendment. Now we're going to the original purchasing a new truck.
Yep.
To not to exceed $42,238.
So that original motion now amended. Okay. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay. That is carried. I'm next to item number 11 out of our utility committee. Actually, 11 and 12 are similar, but this is the LOCOM Chapter 20 drain maintenance. Is there a motion?
So move.
All right.
Support.
Supported. I know utilities provide us good information about that and why it's necessary and why this one's a little higher. I know Joe Bush had recommended this. Any further comments, anything else you'd like the board to know before we vote on it?
Well, the reason it's quite a bit more is because it's a lot more work. It's got a lot of trees. This has been done in like 25 or 30 years, he thought. So it's got a lot of trees that got to come out, including maybe some buildings that got to be moved.
Buildings and fences might be in the way of it.
Yep. So it's, but it's got to get done. So that's the reason for the cost.
All right, appreciate that. Board, any comments, questions? All right, the motion's before you. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed? Motion's carried. As I say, a similar item is item 12, the Watson Chapter 20 drain maintenance, one that we're catching, I guess, a little sooner.
Yep.
And with less obstacles. Is there a motion to approve?
So move.
Or supported. Anything else from utilities you'd like the board to know? I know, again, we got good information on that.
This one was pretty easy.
Yeah. Straightforward.
All right. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed? All right, that's carried. Item 13, commercial dumpster services came out of finance. All the different bids were obtained. I'm on finance. I'll move to approve Arrow Waste to get this 3-year contract according to their bid.
Support.
Supported. I'll say that their bid was only slightly higher, and part of the discussion in finance was that Arrow is local, and we've had good success in getting replies when we inquire, when we need questions answered, or if we're having issues, and that's worth a lot. Anybody else from finance? Any comments? No?
I mean, that's generally the theme. I like to have 2 or 3 bids, and if it's someone in Georgetown, they're close. They're the preference for me.
Okay.
And we had good experience with them.
Mm-hmm.
Yep. Anyone else? Any comments? All right. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
When opposed? It is approved. Item 14 now, inflationary compensation for township staff. This came out of Finance Committee as well. And as a member of that committee, I'll place the motion on the floor here to approve a 4% cost of living increase immediately and a $500 bonus for all year-round part-time and full-time employees, as well as paid on-call firefighters, as recommended by the Finance Committee.
Support that.
Okay, moved and supported. I can speak to it on behalf of the Finance Committee. It's just a continuation of the last meeting, some of the discussion that took place then. There's no perfect, formula or magic to this. You can be for it, you can be against it, you can think about how for it you are and how high you'd go or how low, but ultimately, the majority of the Finance Committee felt like this was a material change and one that was meant to send a message to our staff that we recognize the times we live in and that we want them to know that we support them and appreciate them. And I said this last meeting, I'll say it again. I know this whole board would say that as well, no matter where you may land on this subject or in exact percentages. So I feel like this is a good down payment toward what might happen on their behalf at the end of the year.
What would be the total percent increase then? Is it a 7?
It's a 4%, and then the bonus is a one-time $500 bonus.
And then is there the regular percent increase of every year, so a total of 7?
So this is, you're speaking now of what will happen with the new budget at the end of the year, but currently and right now from the current budget would come this 4% cost of living increase and the $500 bonus. What would happen at the end of the year would be determined at the end of the year. In other words,
3 months from now.
Yeah, 3 months from now.
So 3 months from now, they could get no percent increase, or they could get an additional 3% increase,
No,
or whatever increase.
3 months from now, they could be eligible for what we've done in the past, what we call the 1-2-1, 2% cost of living, 1% based on merit, 1% sometimes to catch up those that might be further down the pay scale. And then as we passed in the budget here this evening, an additional 6% set aside that is not guaranteed, but that is going to be part of the consideration and in the budget for determination at that time. So to answer your question, it could be, I suppose you could say as little as 2%, as high as 10.
And Jim, in the motion, make sure this does not include the board or boards or the superintendent.
Excuse me?
In the motion, do not include the board,
Right.
or the superintendent.
Okay. I should have clarified, and this will not include the board members here, and it does not include our superintendent. But so we're mixing concepts a little bit, but I understand the question between what we're asking to do now versus what we might do later, and what the combination thereof could be, what the range could be. And I could see that range being anywhere from a total between now and then, between 6 and 10. CPI being 8.3.
I was under the assumption that when we talked about adding the 6% to the budget, it was for this reason right here, which was what the motion is right now is 4%. But you're talking, that was on top of this 4%, and then come January for raise time, that's going to increase that 6%? That's what?
Yeah, so...
All right, so I was confused on that. So I was assuming that the 6% was giving us a cushion for what we're voting on right now.
Well, I think, just thinking back to the last meeting, I think that became clear. In fact, Ryan, I think, made me be very clear about that in terms of how I was thinking through that, personally at least. And if it wasn't clear, I guess I'm trying to make that clear here, which is this is for now, and the other was a set aside for later. And I think I said, unapologetically, I would hope they would receive at the end of the year the maximum allowable that we set aside, but it's not a guarantee, and this board will have a chance to, I expect, to have some say if they wish in that matter when that time comes. I know we've got support with Ryan, at least for this, for the immediate.
I mean,
John is supported, yeah.
I guess I'll talk on this now.
Yeah.
I guess I'm a little confused now. If this was a version of the 6% that was already set aside and it was just earlier, or now the 6% is something different on top of it as well still now? I guess I'm confused by that. And also this whole topic, obviously the first initial time it was brought up, it was an 8% and $1,000 bonus. So the negotiation part of it was we got it to 4 and 500. And in the past week since finance, I've done my due diligence and talking to a lot of the people in the community. I just want to know, is any other companies providing an inflationary budget increase or a wage increase? I talked to probably 25 plus, and some of them are getting their normal increase that they get per year, which is anywhere from 2 to 5%. I didn't encounter anybody that was getting an inflationary bump up. So I guess that made me rethink some of this, where we would be the only ones that I know of that are giving an inflationary bump up now to a staff. And obviously I know as an employer you want to make sure your staff is taken care of, but now it's a little muddied because I don't know if this is now this plus the 6% as well. So I don't think it has my support anymore at this point.
Okay.
Yeah.
I do recall, though, and I think you will too, and maybe the other board members in the last meeting when we voted on the 6% related to the 2023 budget, I specifically said, and I'll take up in finance where it appropriately belonged, because I wasn't trying to usurp that process, the question of what we might do now, partway through the year under the current budget for 2022, which we then did. And I understand you're withdrawing your support for that, but at least I want to be clear. I think I was clear last meeting about seeing those as two different subjects. So.
I'll be brief about my on the record for this one, and I see this as like a 3-point reasoning for my position. It's very similar to 2 weeks ago. And I take the viewpoint from the taxpayer perspective, and it's about principle, number one. We're not willing to provide depends on what you define surplus as, which we have yet to do. But to give money back to the constituents, the taxpayers, at the same time you're providing an inflationary increase to the employees, where the taxpayers, the private community that we have, is seeing the same inflationary increases, but they're not seeing that bump in salary. Similar to you, Ryan, I've asked across the board. I'm involved in a lot of industries. There's no inflationary increase. It's the regular 3 to 5%. Some companies are doing a nice bump bonus. Definitely, that is within scope of reasonable. So that's number one. Number two, I already talked about taxpayer to take that position. And really, 3 is the strategy around this. That same peanut butter spread percent across all the different salaries is a big difference. Someone that's making $100,000 at 7% or 4% is a bigger jump than someone that's making 30-35%. So taking the same peanut butter spread across the whole township doesn't really have strategy to it, similar to the bonus structure as well, giving everybody $500. So you guys know where my position is on this. Those are the 3 reasonings as to why I stand where I stand. That's all.
I take basically the same position as I thought this was going to be fleshed out more in finance, and the details would have been figured out. But my issue is inflation is affecting those who make less. So this 4% across the board I just don't think that was the right way to do it. And I was hoping in finance we would talk about maybe caps, because obviously I put the number at 75,000, 80,000. Higher priced gas, more expensive groceries. It affects the person making $12, $14 an hour a lot more than the person who's making $35 an hour. And also, so that cap would be in place, and I think one way to do that would have been a percentage ranging from 2% to 6%, 6% being for the lower end of the pay scale, going up to 2% on the higher end, just because that is a more, probably an accurate way to distribute. Also, I did have a question too on 500 bonus. We didn't discuss it all in finance, but I would like 500 for full-time employee, yes, but part-time employees, I'm not sure why we didn't even discuss the option of maybe 250 because it's a part-time position. So it just feels like it didn't get, and I know in finance we literally had 20 items on the agenda at the last one, so it was, a couple committee members had to leave, so we couldn't even finish, which we'll do at the next meeting. But I think it was all kind of rushed, and I just don't feel like it was really given the time it deserved to really discuss it and work through it.
A couple of thoughts about that. I know, I guess I asked the question back, how much more figured out did it need to be? In that, you make it sound like this is the first time we brought it up, but in fact for 4 months we've been discussing this in finance, including looking at everybody's pay rate here in the township, including figuring out that it would be $29,300, I think, per percent. I mean, we did due diligence, we did math, we looked at the exact positions, we looked at what their pay structure was. This is not a hasty decision. I like some of your thoughts, Michael, when it comes to the idea of the bonuses and maybe higher percentages for people lower on the wage scale. I think that would be something with this year-end decision-making and additional authority or opportunity that's been given in the 23 budget to perhaps look at weighting that way based on, where I'm at in the pay scale. To your point, Kirsten, the bonus was included in part recognition of what you're saying, which is that helps everybody equally versus, the salaried employee who 4% to them is more than 4% to some others. So I'm not saying this as much to be defensive as to say it is something that has been talked about, thought through, discussed, disagreed over, and at times agreed on certain points. And I think some of what's been shared here might be good fodder for what happens going into 2023 out of our budget for next year. But I'd like to see us move ahead with this right now.
Well, and I think an interesting thing that I had asked for is have Dan come into the finance committee and explain to us, because Dan was phenomenal. He had people at a pay rate for a reason, and I wanted to know what those reasons were. But I think these are two different issues. One, what their raises will be come first of the year, and then this inflationary part. And that's why when I talk to people out in the community, business owners, constituents who work in the private sector, nobody was getting these kind of raises. Nobody getting extra bonuses, inflationary bonuses. Most employers said, well, if things were getting more difficult, this valuable employee, we raised the rate. It wasn't directly.
It sounds like a lot of anecdotal evidence. I mean, for all I know, each of the three of you have talked to 5 people. I don't know how many you've talked to, but I can say I know people that have given other raises. And I think quite apart from that anecdotal evidence, I might want to lead the way on this and to say we treat our people well. When we've got an employee here who's about to retire next year, has worked here for 40 years, and her hourly rate is $24 an hour, I don't think we have a lot to apologize to the community about in giving the 4% raise. It might be that we are doing so in part because we recognize we are underpaying. When we have job openings we can't get candidates for, it's an indicator we are underpaying. And as we've said before, I think we will end up paying far more than what we're talking about in increases if we have to raise pay to fill open positions. It'll cost us more than what we're talking about right here. So I think maybe penny wise, pound foolish.
Jim, I agree with that. I think, first of all, we're deciding on a pay raise right now. We're not deciding on the raises that are coming after the first of the year when we discuss that. So 4%, to me, is a fair way to get started. And we'll review. We're worried about what the raise may be on top of that. We haven't given this one yet. And I agree with Jim. My business is pretty much labor intensive, and everybody I hire is labor intensive. And I'm seeing the raises go up. So I'm seeing inflation in raises. And the biggest thing right now isn't so much the money as retention. You can't retain employees unless you pay them. And I hear it every day. I get guys come to me constantly. Hey, I got a guy that offered me another $1 an hour. What do you want to do about that? So guess what? I got to give him $1 an hour because I'm going to lose that guy. And I'm going to pay as much as what I am to replace him, but I get to spend the next 3 months training a guy doing the things that the other guy already trained to do for the last 2 years. So we're going to run into that. We've got a couple positions open, including a zoning administrator, and I don't know if we ever got anybody for elections yet or not. But you know, these positions are open, and they're tough positions to fill because number one, they're job specific. And a zoning administrator isn't exactly somebody you just pull off the street and say, let's do zoning. I'm on the planning commission. That's a large book. I've had a tough time navigating around the ordinances and stuff. So we need a guy that actually has experience in that and then understand our zoning laws, because our zoning laws are, every township has different zoning laws. I deal in several townships, so I know. So I look at it and go, let's start with this. Let's give the 4% cost living increase, $500 bonus, which I think is fair. And we'll review whether we should add on to that at the end of the year or not. But at least we got to start. And we show our employees that we appreciate them, and we do. We run our township in a very lean amount of employees compared to most. So that's what my thought is.
Jim, I agree with Gary. And our people have served us so well. They do the work of 2-3 people, and some are retiring that have just been key. Others are seeing greener pastures, and they're just looking. It's a very, very competitive market, and if we can't come close to matching that, we're going to lose even more. To only have 28, 29 people that are full-time with this size is just phenomenal. Dan did a great job. The previous boards, this board, I think, has done a wonderful job, and Rob is doing a great job stepping in here. But we have to start matching. We have to start stepping up, and we have to start supporting our employees. I think even at a higher level. You go almost any business, and you say, well, why is the service so slow here? Well, we can't get people to come in. We're going to lose these key people. So I support it.
I support it too. I think that just because the anecdotal evidence of people we talk to in the community that those people aren't seeing these increases yet doesn't mean that the conversations aren't happening in those employers, boardrooms, and corporate offices and stuff about how do we retain people and how do we, like Gary said, pay the people that we've already trained well enough that they'll stay here so that we don't have to bring in somebody new at that higher rate and then still train them. I think that we absolutely need to lead the way on this. I think that this motion doesn't lock us into anything come the end of the year, but it gets us out first, acknowledging our people and doing what we can to retain and appreciate and support our people. So that the other businesses that are in the other, companies in the private sector that are having these same conversations behind closed doors about how are we going to attract a better workforce, how are we going to retain our people. It isn't good to be the last one out of the gate in that regard. It's better to be one of the first ones out of the gate in that regard, or we will lose people in the meantime while other people are passing things like this. So if this locks us into something related to the end of the year, my opinion might be different because we don't know where we're going to be as a state and as a country financially, come the end of the year. But this doesn't lock us into anything for later, and I think that this gets us out ahead of some of the private sector, and we got to take care of our people.
Other comments?
I guess I could ask the feelings of the part-time, full-time $500. Or I guess I'll move to make an amendment to the motion on the floor for it to be $500 for full-time employees, $250 for part-time employees. And then if there's support and we vote on it, then it is what it is. 500 full-time, and then $250 cash bonus for part-time employees.
Support that.
Discussion on the motion.
And I guess the reason for the amendment is just because if I was a full-time employee and I'm like, hey, a part-time employee is getting the same cash bonus as me. I'm a full-time employee. I should get something more. So that's my reasoning behind it.
They are getting something more though. They're getting 4% on their higher pay probably than lower. I feel like that 500 being across the board, like if we are going to say we know that the people who make less are the ones who are feeling inflation the most, then the 500 bonus across the board kind of works in those people's favor, and where then the people who we pay more, the 4%, works more so in their favor. It feels like you're bringing some balance to both sides of the argument.
What about the possibility of raising it to 1,000 and giving the part-timers 500? And you've got that differentiation. Give the full-timers 1,000, give the part-timers 500. Yeah.
I might entertain that if we were to look at that the 6% to 2% starting from the bottom.
That's your perspective. I don't want to necessarily tie in, I guess, the year-end thought with this, because I feel like that would be a little bit preemptive or premature. I like that idea, quite possibly for a year-end.
So I'm talking for, instead of 4% across the board, 6% to 2% based on the hourly or salaried wage.
Not to get too complicated, but again,
So there's a motion for amendment on the floor, so I guess I'll call the question.
Okay, call the question. So it's been moved by Michael, supported by Ryan, to reduce the bonus for part-timers under this motion that's on the floor from 500 to 250. And the question's been called. So shall we roll call it? Just I think it's going to be a mixed vote.
Mr. Schwam.
No.
Ms. Steele.
No.
Rick is a yes. Supervisor.
No.
Treasurer.
Yes.
Mr. Belling.
No.
Mrs. Monti.
No.
Okay.
Okay. Any other comments? We still have the original motion. Hearing none. Roll call vote again.
Mrs. Monti.
No.
Mr. Belling.
Yes.
Treasurer.
No.
Supervisor.
Yes.
Clerk is a no. Ms. Steele.
Yes.
Mr. Schwam.
Yes.
4-3.
Item 15, second public comment period. We're here from the public tonight. If you'd like to come forward and address us on any that you want. Of course, that doesn't exclude you, Roger and Brad, either, if you wish to return. Appreciate you staying and observing. Seeing none, we'll close that final public comment period of the evening. Item 16, discussion and general information among the board. Anyone have anything they wish to bring up to the board at this point?
And I'm glad Raj was here and Brad, but this ARPA thing is still in my crawl, and I'm going to try to figure out what it's going to take to get at the feet of some of that money in the Ottawa County. And I think we need to work harder at it. I don't know if it takes a letter from superintendent, supervisor, or if we got to go to a meeting. But if you read some of those minutes that are coming out right now, that money is just going to evaporate. And to be honest with you, I think part of it is they got a new board in there, and I think they're going to spend it before they get out by the end of the year. They're being vindictive, as far as I'm concerned. When I see who's on that board and what's happening there, I'm sorry, but it's wrong. $57 million. I mean, we're entitled to 1/6 of it, as far as I'm concerned. $300,000. And I'll say the same thing, and I'll say this publicly. At the same issue, there's 300,000 residents in Ottawa County. We've only got 2,200 surveys back. 2,200 out of 300,000. So that means 390. We got almost more surveys in our township than they did in the county, and yet they're going to base everything on these surveys.
You know,
and the surveys are skewed because if you look at the results of who actually filled them out, they say the number one thing is affordable housing, and yet the bulk of the people that filled that survey out, 90% owned a home. And the numbers that came in of those who actually filled them out are in their mid-50s or in their mid-30s. And their annual income is $100,000 to $150,000 a year. So to tell me it's affordable housing, I'd love to see how they came to that, because it doesn't make any sense when you look at who's filling it out.
you know,
I'm a numbers guy. Trust me, I read these things and I go, this doesn't make any sense.
Gary, it's worse than that because the money was going to go where it's going before there ever was the idea of a survey.
Oh, I could see that.
Out of, frankly, some discussion that Rob and I had with another commissioner who talked to a commissioner who talked to the commissioner. I mean, they kind of did the survey, in my opinion, as cover, agree, for what they were already going to do.
Well, the questions were leading too.
Clearly.
Do you want affordable housing? Do you want gas to be $1 a gallon? Of course I do. All right, let's make this happen. It's so stupid. I'm sorry. It's in my crawl. I mean, I've done a lot of reading this week on this whole thing, and their website. It's on their website. You can read it all. You can see between the lines.
Did you fill out the survey?
I didn't even know it was even there. I never even heard about it.
I filled it out. I told them to wait till the new board comes into office to make any decisions. So
Yeah, I didn't even know there was a survey available until all of a sudden this all came up.
Rob and I did go to one of their meetings, and yeah, it was frustrating. Then I followed up with that meeting and met with John Shea, and told him the very thing that you keep emphasizing tonight, which is we're 6 of your population, and we're overlooked, you know. But I'm keep letting your voice be heard.
All right.
For that matter, it dovetails with what I wanted to say, and I'll say it again. But Ottawa County Road Commission, we could really use an inside voice. I did get a couple of name ideas this week from someone in the public, but I still would like to hear from others. So if you think of, I think I sent you an email, Gary, too, saying you feel like you're more connected to that world. But that's where it starts. We got to get on these, you know, in these places, you know, of having influence. And I think you're right. I think the ARPA money will be gone.
And I did look into it myself. I've not said no yet. I'm trying to glean some information exactly what's involved. So.
Yeah.
I believe we're allowed 2 representatives, aren't we?
I don't know. I'm not sure.
Supposed to be 6 people on the board. I think there's 5 now. And
It's that way, Michael. I don't think.
I went to one of them.
What's that? Oh, they do? Of course, after I sent my email, and you get appointed by the Board of Commissioners, and you're like, there ain't no way this guy's getting on the board.
Gary, don't tell your wife, okay?
No.
Yeah.
The bad thing is they meet on Thursday morning. I usually head up north on Thursday.
That may change too with this new board. I know they're talking about the commissioner meetings being
Really?
at night, so I have heard that. But
Really?
anyone else, discussion, general information for the board?
Something minor, Jim. There was an accident in front of us on 44th and 14th, and it was no one got hurt, but it was horrendous. The car spun about 5 times, and Dan was there within minutes, and so was Richard, and it was handled so professionally. But it was like a movie. But our people stepped up and just did an incredible job.
Anybody killed?
No, but the car literally spun, and it did at least 5 revolutions before it hit the ground, and hit a mother and her baby, and they were okay.
Wow.
There was 2 kids driving the car. They leaped out, ran to make sure the mother was okay, and they were 300 feet away by the time their car came to a halt. But they were very responsive. The Sheriff's Department did a terrific job. It was impressive.
Never seen anything like that. Anyone else? Hearing none, is there a motion to adjourn?
So move.
Support.
All in favor, say aye.
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 Meeting is adjourned.